here in Toronto for the million-person March for Children. Toronto is just one of the stops of many across the country where parents have gathered to oppose radical gender ideology in classrooms. There has to be at least 2,000 people here opposing gender ideology in class with a single and clear message: leave our kids alone. This protest, the million-person March for Children, has been organized by a group of Muslim parents who have been pushed to their limits with the gender ideology craze in schools. I'm not exactly sure, but I have to believe that the origin for this protest might have been when a video surfaced of Justin Trudeau telling a group of Muslim parents that their concerns about what's been going on in schools is actually just disinformation from the American far right. Remember this clip?
People on social media, particularly fueled by the American right wing, are spreading a lot of untruths.
Protests against gender ideology in classrooms have been picking up in this country. We've been on the ground to cover several throughout this year alone. It seems as though parents are finally waking up to what is being put in front of children. In Ontario, teachers are still withholding the social transition of children away from their parents, keeping it a little secret between teachers and students away from parents. Provinces, however, have started to turn this around. New Brunswick was the first to introduce legislation to stop this practice. Manitoba Premier Heather Stevenson announced that if re-elected, she would introduce a bill to stop this practice, and Saskatchewan have ended it already. Doug Ford last week said that schools need to stop indoctrinating parents and that parents have a right to know what's going on with their kids. Take a listen to this.
It's not up to the teachers, it's not up to the school boards to indoctrinate our kids.
According to union members who have organized a counter-protest called No Place for Hate, this is apparently a gathering behind me of racists and fascists and people who are fundamentally anti-union. Despite the fact that, of course, the people who have gathered here to oppose radical gender ideology, just by looking at the crowd, appear to be far more diverse than the people who have gathered to counter-protest this event. We've been able to speak to several parents who have gathered here today to ask them what brings them out and what they take issue with going on in Ontario schools. Here's what they have had to say. What brings you out here today?
Okay, I'm here to stand up for our children. The Bible said the children are our future, and we're here to protect the rights experience with our children. Our children deserve to have the right. The Bible said, train up a child in the way they should be. We're not troubling anybody. We are just standing up for our rights, for our children.
Doug Ford has said that, he said it 2 weeks ago, that schools need to stop indoctrinating kids. But as of right now in Ontario, a teacher can withhold the social transition of a student from their parents. What do you make of that? Why are politicians not willing to pass legislation to stop this?
You see, that's what politics do. Politics pretend. Politics try to win on both sides. So they're like bipolar.
All these parents out here today have nothing against any of the LGBTQ community. I have friends, I have co-workers that are part of the community, and we have all only love for them. And I have nothing to say to whatever they're doing. They can do whatever they want, but when it comes to my child, I have that right. I have the right to teach my child what I want to teach them. I have certain beliefs, and I want everyone to respect that. Every one of us here today want our values to be respected. That's all.
There's a large counter-protest on the other side of Queen's Park, and one of the signs said that you don't own your kids. What do you make of that? What do you make of people saying that the parents seemingly don't own their own children? And I guess, who do you think does in their thinking?
Well, I suppose from their perspective, we don't own our kids because they want to be able to take control of our kids. Okay? When they try to separate the kids from the parents, you got a problem.
What do you make of the news and the videos we've seen and even images of material being sent to children in schools that is extremely explicit and sexual in nature, being passed on as part of the curriculum? What do you make of that?
No, actually, this is not appropriate. If guardians are not comfortable, curriculum should not expose those things.
There's a very large Muslim contingent of people here. They've shown up in numbers. Counter-protesters, though, have labeled this protest as a racist and fascist gathering of ultra-conservatives. Have you seen anything here that would lead you to believe this is a group of fascists and racists today?
No, actually, all groups are here to protest the what happening in the school nowadays. All kind of like all religious people are here, like different religious, even some atheist people are here. They want their rights, parents' rights is the main issue here.
I flew in from Nova Scotia because I wanted to be here. And this is my sister. I came here with her. And I'm very passionate. I want to protect my grandchildren. My grandchildren are all school age now, and I'm afraid for them. And they don't have a voice. A lot of younger people, a lot of younger parents are afraid to say anything. And I've been told that. They're afraid. Well, why aren't you doing anything about this if you know about it? Well, because I'm afraid. What if they take my child away from me?
What's your message to politicians who seem to be hesitant to approach this issue?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for people here in Ontario, but I'm just kind of, I can't even believe this is a subject, you know? Like, the politicians need to be here for the people.
Well, I think the education system is one-sided, and Canada is not about taking care of one group or one faith group or one ideology. Canada is supposed to be inclusive, and a Charter of Rights and freedom of religion include that. And we believe that our children, our community, the faith-based community throughout Canada, and particularly in Ontario, has been ignored and have been walked over by the new curriculum behind the scene. And that is not right. We are fighting for our rights. We are fighting for the Canadian value. We are fighting for freedom of religion. We are fighting for Charter of Rights. And that is what Canada makes the best country in the world.
In schools right now, in Ontario schools, a teacher can withhold the transition of a child from a parent. What do you guys make of what's going on in schools right now?
Which is absolutely wrong, which is against democracy, which is against Canadian value, which is against the value of every Canadian. And we need to understand that this group or these people are not against other value system, but that value cannot walk over my value on us. And what they're doing in the school system behind parents' back, which is wrong, illegal, and it should be stopped.
I'm here to protect my son's identity. Like, my kid is 5 years old. He keeps changing his idea of a birthday every single 15 minutes. So I don't think he's capable of making a decision like that for himself. I'm his mom. He has a dad. We're the ones who's responsible for whatever decision he needs to make. Not the school, not the teachers, us, his parents.
I think that Kathleen Wynne is the one that kind of got this all started in terms of changing the sex curriculum. And I think we were all a little bit not paying attention. Parents need to find their voice. Politicians, they hear silence. They don't do anything.
We also wanted to make sure that we were able to cover the other side of the story, cover the counter-protest. When we tried to speak to them, however, they didn't really seem that interested in speaking to us. A few people did, however, in good faith, answer our questions, but most of them responded by swearing at us and encircling us with their signs and umbrellas. At what age should a child be able to transition their gender, you think?
Gender is a social construct. There shouldn't have been gender placed on a child.
So every child should just have no gender, in your opinion?
So are you saying that toddler clothing should be sexualized?
No, quite the opposite.
But it is. So when you can change the systems that are already in place, then we can have this conversation.
We've heard from people who are organizing the counter-protest that the people on the other side are fascist and even racist. What do you guys make of that? Is that your guys' opinion, that the people on the other side here are indeed fascist and racist?
I don't know whether they're fascist or racist. I know that they're confused. And so we're here to educate and to help clear their narrowness from their mind.
I'd like to ask you about your sign. You don't own your kids. Could you explain that for us?
No, don't talk to them.
So who does own the kids then?
I want to talk to you.
Behind me you can see a sign that says, "You don't own your kids." I tried to ask what that means, and nobody told us. You don't own your kids. Well, if parents don't own their kids, who owns the kids? Listen. All for asking a question about somebody's sign at the protest. You don't own your kids. Counter-protesters organized this event, saying that the protesters on the other side of Queen's Park are racist and fascist. In reality, that protest was organized by an elderly Muslim woman, and when we've been asking people if that elderly Muslim woman is in fact a fascist and a racist, well, they don't have much of a response.
I take it you're not with our side, so you can go off right now. Bye.
Thank you very much, miss.
You guys are exactly the same as the fundamentalists in Iran that persecute people, that kill people, murder people. Exactly the same.
I did find it interesting, however, that on the counter-protest side, a group of Marxists with their Marxist banner were shouting, "Whose schools, our schools, whose kids, our kids."
Whose kids? Our kids! Whose kids? Our kids! Whose schools? Our schools! Whose schools? Our schools!
It seems they may be mistaken because the last time I checked, the schools belong to the public and children belong to their parents, not Marxists and counter-protesters. We were also able to catch up with Tammy Peterson, the wife of Jordan Peterson. Back in 2015, Jordan Peterson was one of the first in this country to raise the alarm about compelled speech and the use of pronouns in schools. My, how things have changed since then. We went from concerns over pronouns in schools to what we're seeing now in schools. Here's what Tammy Peterson had to say about what's been going on in this country since 2015. Your husband was really the first, I think, to raise the alarm about the use of pronouns in school, and now we're here with a major protest happening across the country. What do you make of the progression of how everything has been unfolding?
Well, things have happened just like he said they would. He said that this would progress. Everyone said, "Oh, you know, what are you worried about? Why aren't you letting people do whatever they want?" And he said, "No. When you tell people that they have no agency over what they say, if they're told to use words that they don't want to use, this is going to go places that we shouldn't go, that people have gone before in history. We know it's not a good idea to compel speech, and now they're compelling what we learn in the schools. You know, it's gotten more complicated, and now it's our children that are at risk. And I think in times of history, it always comes down to the children. And that's when we've gone too far. We have to see that the children are at risk, that they are going to be confused by all of this, and they're vulnerable. And so it's up to us, all these people here that are gathering today, to just do the next right thing and say no to all of this stuff that's going on at school.
One of the things that parents are really upset about, and we're starting to see provinces make legislation to stop it, is this practice of socially transitioning children behind the backs of parents, allowing a child to use a different name and a different pronoun and not telling the parents. We heard Doug Ford speak out about it, but he has yet to introduce legislation like Saskatchewan, Manitoba, New Brunswick. Is it political correctness that's holding politicians back in this province from following the wishes of parents? What do you make of the fact that politicians seem to be afraid to approach this issue?
Well, I think that politicians use polls. They use polls to decide what they're going to do. And who are the people that respond to the polls? Are they busy, hardworking people that have kids to take care of and jobs and households to run? Or are they people who are trying to put their time into activism and responding to that? And if that's what politicians are going to respond to, polling, then they're not going to be moving in the right direction of the citizens of the town.
And last question, I mean, there's a large counter-protest on the other side of Queen's Park right now. There was a Zoom video of union leaders labeling this protest that's happening across the country as ultra-conservative, as fascist. What do you make of the fact that so many unions are involved in trying to oppose this protest and labeling it a fascist gathering?
I watched that little video. It was very interesting that the people in the video, everything they talked about was we and them. There was never any individual accountability, and that makes it easy to point fingers if there's no one person that you're pointing a finger at. It makes you feel like you're not offending anybody because you're offending everybody. And I think that the unions, they've always been organizing. They've always been protesting. They're very good at this. This is what they've done. But now they've latched onto something that I think is going to bring down the school system. And, you know, in the States, we've been talking and hoping that the Teachers Federation and the ability for the education department to decide who's going to be a teacher or not should be taken away from the universities. It's time that the teachers their power is taken away from them. And it's afraid, there's many good teachers, but the way that they're chosen now it's been politicized, and we have to let that go and start again.
Thank you so much, Tammy.
Thank you.
Counter-protesters decided to encircle the Million March for Kids group here in Toronto outside of Queen's Park. Queen's Park is separated in two, and the counter-protesters were originally stationed on the south lawn with the million-person anti-gender ideology protest on the north lawn. Eventually, the counter-protests came over onto this side and encircled the protest. You can see some of what that looked like now. Despite all of that, the event went off peacefully and without a hitch. It was smooth, it was clean, and it was clear. The message from these protesters was clear. Leave our kids alone. Ratio of the week time. The winner this week is QP Ontario, one of the many labor unions who organized the No Place for Hate counter-protest to the 1 Million March for Children. This ratio is absolutely brutal. 7,346 replies to only 4,441 likes at the time of this recording. The ultra-conservative right has organized nationwide events under the pretext of protecting children, while their true aim is to protest the teaching of 2S LGBTQIA+ content in schools. Yes, the ultra-conservative right led by a group of Muslim parents. Our mission is clear: to counter these protests and demonstrate unequivocally that there is no place for hate within our society. We shall stand together, resolute in our commitment to combat lies and misinformation while championing love, care, and respect. Oh, and as you can see over at the QP counter-protest, love, respect, and care were on full display. We are calling upon every QP Ontario member to take action. Mass participation in these protests is essential to our cause. Together, let's make our presence felt, countering false rhetoric, exposing lies, and proudly declaring that Canada has no tolerance for hate or discrimination. Aren't you supposed to represent your members, not be a mouthpiece for the state? One user writes. I'm a QP member and you do not speak for me. I'm also a liberal, as in liberalism, not a, quote, liberal party voter, as they are not truly liberals. Anyway, on this issue, I stand 100% behind the so-called ultra-conservative right, parental rights over state rights. And another user writes, QP, the same union that sat on their hands and allowed me and anyone else who refused the jab to be fired. I lost all respect for unions then, so thankfully, there's no respect for you left to lose. Truly pathetic from these labor unions, but like many have noted, not that surprising. The majority of Canadians, based on what we've seen from the 1 Million March for Children, stand on the side of parental rights, not the side where people are waving pictures of Karl Marx and the hammer and sickle while shouting, whose children, our children, and whose schools, our schools.
Whose kids, our kids. Whose schools, our schools.
Go figure, who could have possibly guessed? All right, everyone, that's going to do it for us this week on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratio.